Few stories probe the human soul with the depth, tension, and tenderness found in the brothers Karamazov. Set in 19th century Russia, the story unfolds around the chaotic, volatile, and tragic Karamazov family, an explosive mixture of pride, passion, intellect, and moral struggle. At its center stands a drama of patricide, but beneath that crime lies a series of questions. What compels people to goodness or violence? How do faith and doubt coexist? And can love redeem even the darkest heart? This narration traces the emotional journey of the Karamazov brothers: Dmitri, or Mitya, the eldest and most impulsive; Ivan, the cold intellectual; and Alyosha, the gentle spiritual youngest who was turned toward monastic life. A fourth son, the quiet servant Smerdyakov, is rumored to be Fyodor's illegitimate child, though never fully acknowledged. The brothers return home when Dmitri accuses Fyodor of withholding his inheritance. The tension between them is violent and deeply emotional. Dmitri feels robbed of both money and love. Fyodor mocks him and brags about his own lust for Grushenka, a beautiful, cunning woman who has also entangled Dmitri's heart. Their competition for her affection becomes a symbol of the generational corruption that infects the Karamazov men. Meanwhile, Alyosha seeks counsel from the wise and compassionate elder Zosima at his monastery. Zosima teaches that spiritual healing begins with accepting responsibility for the suffering of others. These teachings become a moral anchor throughout the story, shaping Alyosha's role as a quiet witness to the storms advancing around him. Torn between passion for Grushenka and his engagement to the noble but wounded Katerina Ivanovna, Dmitri is pulled into a whirlwind of guilt and ecstasy. He oscillates between reckless generosity and desperate mania, leading him to borrow and squander money. Fearful of losing Grushenka, feeling misunderstood by Katerina, and obsessed with the inheritance, Dmitri's emotional life becomes volcanic. On the other hand, Ivan wrestles silently with philosophical doubt. He rejects the moral universe upheld by Alyosha and Zosima. In his most haunting idea, Ivan argues that if God does not exist, or if the world is so cruel that God is irrelevant, then moral values collapse. Everything is permitted becomes the shadow hanging over his philosophical rebellion. Ivan's turmoil is intellectual, but its consequences radiate far beyond rational debate. Smerdyakov, living in Ivan's shadow, listens quietly. He's treated with scorn by Fyodor and dismissed by the family. Yet his mind is sharp, cunning, and simmering with resentment. He absorbs Ivan's arguments keenly, especially the idea that morality is arbitrary. His bitterness grows, forming the roots of a dangerous ideology. As tensions heighten, Grushenka appears to choose Dmitri after all, but only after days of emotional manipulation. Dmitri becomes obsessed with obtaining the money he believes Fyodor owes him. He believes that if he can secure it, he can chase after Grushenka and claim his happiness once and for all. One night, driven by fear of losing Grushenka forever, Dmitri prowls near Fyodor's estate. He carries a pestle as a potential weapon, though he insists he would never kill his father. His mind races with jealousy and desperation. That same night, Smerdyakov puts a plan into motion. He knows that Fyodor eagerly awaits Grushenka, hoping she will visit him. He manipulates circumstances so the servants are absent, then stages himself as sick and helpless, encouraging Ivan to leave town. Before Ivan departs, he tells Ivan cryptically that one who believes everything is permitted should not be surprised when someone acts on that belief. With Ivan gone, Fyodor alone, and Dmitri lurking outside, Smerdyakov murders Fyodor, steals the envelope of money, and disappears into the background. Not long afterward, Dmitri, in a frenzy over his lost hopes and believing Grushenka to be with another man, bursts into a house party covered in blood from smashing a servant in anger and carrying the very money Smerdyakov stole. The circumstantial evidence condemns him before he can even imagine defending himself. At almost the same moment, Grushenka embraces Dmitri, but by then, his fate is nearly sealed. Soon the police arrest him for Fyodor's murder. When Ivan returns, he learns of the murder and becomes increasingly convinced that Smerdyakov is involved. Smerdyakov eventually confesses, explaining that Ivan's philosophy made it morally permitted. He insisted he merely carried out what Ivan believed but was too cowardly to do. The burden of moral responsibility crushes Ivan. His mind begins to fracture under the weight of guilt and the sense that his words, while abstract to him, had lethal influence on another. He sees visions, including a mocking devil who personifies his intellectual arrogance and spiritual emptiness. These hallucinations are some of the most chilling moments in the narrative, illustrating how belief, or disbelief, can shape one's sanity. Meanwhile, Alyosha remains a steadying force. After the death of Elder Zosima, people expect miracles from his body, but instead, his corpse decays quickly, disappointing believers and causing mockery. Yet Alyosha emerges from this crisis strengthened, realizing faith can't be based on miracles alone, but must rest on compassion and the recognition of divine love in human relationships. Alyosha becomes a beacon of hope, particularly for a group of young boys, including the ill Kolya and the dying Ilyusha. Their suffering and innocence remind Alyosha that the struggles of adults ripple outward, harming the young, and that redemption begins in small acts of care. Dmitri's trial becomes the dramatic center of society's fascination. The courtroom buzzes with tension. Witness after witness paints Dmitri as the father-beating, impulsive hothead driven by jealousy and lust. His past actions, debts, and violent outbursts make it easy for the prosecution to portray him as a murderer. Though Dmitri valiantly insists on his innocence regarding the murder, he admits his many other sins. This honesty ironically weakens his credibility. The jury sees him as a man capable of anything. Ivan arrives to exonerate him, but his mind is too fractured, his speech erratic. His attempts to explain Smerdyakov's confession collapse into disjointed rants. His testimony instead convinces the jury that the Karamazov family is simply full of madness and depravity. The verdict: Dmitri is found guilty of patricide and sentenced to years of hard labor in Siberia. In the aftermath, Grushenka pledges to follow Dmitri to Siberia, and Alyosha supports plans to help him escape someday. Their hope is fragile but sincere. Dmitri dreams not only of freedom, but also of moral rebirth, of becoming a better man if granted another chance. Ivan collapses into illness, tortured by guilt, unable to reconcile the consequences of ideas he once considered purely philosophical. Smerdyakov, having confessed, dies by suicide, leaving behind a web of moral devastation. Yet, amid sorrow, Alyosha remains the novel's quiet symbol of renewal. He gathers the schoolboys grieving the death of little Ilyusha and teaches them to honor his memory and to carry love into adulthood. In his gentle guidance, we see the possibility that compassion can heal what intellect alone cannot. The heart of the story. The brothers Karamazov ends not with resolution, but with a moral invitation. Each brother embodies a part of the human struggle. Dmitri, passion seeking redemption. Ivan, intellect seeking meaning. Alyosha, faith seeking compassion. Smerdyakov, resentment seeking justification. Their life intersect through a crime, but the deeper journey is spiritual. Dostoevsky suggests that love, responsibility, and empathy, not logic or desire, are the true foundations of human morality. The novel leaves us with an enduring question. Can the human soul rise above suffering, guilt, and doubt? The novel's answer is not absolute, but through Alyosha's final words to the children, "Let us remember one another," it suggests that our salvation begins in the simple act of choosing love.